Let me tell you something I've been thinking about lately. Fear doesn't always look dramatic, okay? It's not always that big, obvious moment where you say, I'm scared. Sometimes it's quiet. It hides in small decisions, in things you never started, and things you keep postponing without a real explanation. And one day you stop and think, why have I never done this? Like, not something big, something simple, like learning how to skate. And it sounds almost ridiculous, right? But then you go deeper and you ask yourself honestly, why? And suddenly the answers start to appear. Maybe you are afraid of falling, maybe you are afraid of getting hurt, maybe you are afraid of looking awkward, maybe you are afraid of people seeing you as a beginner. And that's the moment everything becomes clear. It was never about skating, it was about fear. And like the scary part is not the fear itself, it's how easily you accept it without questioning it. Because when you really look at it, what is the worst thing that could happen? You fall, you look inexperienced, you try something new and you are not good at it at first. That's normal, that's human, but your mind turns these small possibilities into barriers. And suddenly, something simple becomes something you just never did. Now think about how many things in your life fall into that category, like things you didn't start, things you didn't try, not because you couldn't, but because you didn't feel comfortable. Like, fear doesn't always stop you loudly. Sometimes it just redirects you quietly. And over time, that becomes your life, a life built around avoiding discomfort. And I want you to really sit with this. Like, a life built on avoidance will always feel limited, okay? Because growth lives on the other side of discomfort, always. And then I started thinking about something else, like something that at first seems completely unrelated. Actors. Like, when someone appears in a film or a series that no one expected to become big, like maybe it's a small project, maybe it's something like no one is paying much attention to, and then suddenly it explodes, like millions of people watch it, and that actor who maybe was just starting becomes known, recognized, seen. And I thought about this deeply. Like, what if they didn't take it seriously? What if they thought, oh, this is just a small project, it doesn't really matter? What if they held back? What if they didn't give their best? Like, that small opportunity could have been the moment everything changed. And they would have missed it. Not because they lacked talent, but because they underestimated the moment. And that made me realize something important. Like, you don't always know which moment matters, okay? You don't always know who is watching. You don't always know which step will lead to something bigger. So every time you show up halfway, every time you decide, oh, this doesn't matter that much, every time you reduce your effort, you might be closing a door you didn't even see. And and this connects directly to fear, because sometimes you don't give your best, not because you don't care, but because it feels safer not to. And because if you don't try fully, you can always say, oh, I could have done better if I wanted. It protects your ego, but it limits your life. And I want you to think about this carefully. What would change if you decided that everything you do deserves your full presence? Like, not perfection, presence, okay? Whether it's something you love or something you don't even enjoy that much, you still show up fully. Like, you still respect your own standard. Because when you do that, something shifts internally. You stop depending on external validation. You stop waiting for big moments to prove yourself. You become consistent, And consistency builds identity. Like you start becoming someone who does things properly. Not for applause, not for recognition, but because that's who you are. Okay, and that's powerful because most people only perform when something feels important. But the truth is, the way you do small things becomes the way you do everything. Okay, if you rush the small things, you will rush the big things. If you avoid discomfort in small situations, you will avoid it in bigger ones. If you hold back in small moments, you will hold back when it matters most. So the question is not, is this important? The question is, who am I choosing to be right now? Okay, and I want to go back to fear for a second. Because fear is not always your enemy. Okay, fear is information. Okay, it shows you where you feel exposed, where you feel uncertain, where you feel vulnerable. But that doesn't mean you stop. It means you move with awareness. Okay, you do it anyway. Not recklessly, but courageously. Okay, there's a difference. Okay, courage is not the absence of fear. Okay, courage is acting despite it. And the more you do that, the more your world expands. Like you start trying things you once avoided. You stop overthinking simple decisions. You stop making everything bigger in your head than it actually is. And life becomes lighter, more open, more alive, because you are no longer controlled by invisible limits. Okay, and I want to leave you with this thought. You don't need to change your entire life overnight, okay? You don't need to suddenly become fearless. You just need to start noticing. Like noticing where fear is quietly like making decisions for you, noticing where like you're holding back, noticing where you are like saying maybe later when you actually mean I am uncomfortable. And then gently challenge it. Try the thing, start the thing, do the thing, even if it's imperfect, because the life you want is not built in comfort. It's built in those small moments where you choose to move anyway. And maybe it starts with something simple. Maybe it starts with trying something you have always postponed. Not because it's life-changing, but because you are. And this was the message of today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And that's it. I see you in the next video. Bye!